This much is clear. There is division. There is division within our own land. And it seems like there is nowhere where division is not. It feels like within our own land, this division is everywhere. And it's most prevalent in the attitudes of others. I think we can see that most clearly, that this division is in the attitudes of others. So I've been wondering, how do we combat that? How do we combat the attitudes of others? I'll put it in the theme of what we've been doing every Tuesday. How do we fight the attitudes of others? And the answer is, we do not. Fighting the attitudes of others only furthers the division. It doesn't help the division. It doesn't solve the division. Fighting the attitudes of others does not solve the division. It will not bring about unity. But there is something to do. There is something to do in the midst of all this division and because of this division. And here it is. It's my own attitude. I have to admit, my attitude has stunk over the last few days. My attitude has not been good. I've had a bad attitude. And so what I would like to do is pose this question, and it is the question for us to think on throughout the rest of this week. And I hope it'll help us get through this week and look forward to Sunday. And the question is this: how do I fight my own attitude? What do I do when I have a bad attitude? And I would think perhaps the time we're in, a cause or a reason for a bad attitude very well may be the attitudes of others. And so what do I do about it? How do I fight? How do I remedy my own attitude? I want us to read through and listen to Psalm chapter 55. Psalm 55. Let's enjoy the reading of God's word. Isn't it a privilege just to be able to read God's word? Here it goes. And again, we're answering the question, how do I fight my own attitude? Give ear to my prayer, O God, and hide not yourself from my plea for mercy. Attend to me and answer me. I am restless in my complaint, and I moan. I think that's a great definition for what a bad attitude is. It's complaining. It's moaning. I am restless in my complaint, and I moan because of the noise of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked. For they drop trouble upon me, and in anger they bear a grudge against me. My heart is in anguish within me. The terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fear and trembling come upon me, and horror overwhelms me. Did you notice anything in those last few verses? The subject of all those verses? The subject of all those verses was what? It's just one simple word, 2 letters, me. And I say, oh, that I had wings like a dove. I would fly away and be at rest. Yes, I would wander far away. I would lodge in the wilderness. I would hurry to find a shelter from the raging wind and tempest. If you're following along, you should see in that chapter the word Selah. It simply means to pause. Pause and think over what you just read, what you just heard. I have to share this. I secretly thought that would be a tremendous remedy. Before I even read Psalm 55, I thought to myself and how great it would be to go Just pick up everything and go live out in the bush somewhere. There's a show, it's not on anymore, but it's about those who live near the Arctic Circle in Alaska. And their nearest neighbor is like 100 miles away. And I got to thinking about them over the last few days, and I started to envy them a bit. Thought, that might be a great solution. Just pick up everything. Go build a little cabin out in the middle of nowhere. And be away from everyone. But it doesn't solve anything, does it? Verse 9. Destroy, O Lord, divide their tongues, for I see violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go around it on its walls, and iniquity and trouble are within it. Ruin is in its midst. Oppression and fraud do not depart from its marketplace. Isn't God's word timeless? Verse 12. For it is not an enemy who taunts me, then I could bear it. It is not an adversary who deals insolently with me, then I could hide from him. But it is you, a man, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend. We used to take sweet counsel together. Within God's house we walked in the throng. Let death steal over them. Let them go down to Sheol alive, for evil is in their dwelling place and in their heart. But I call to God, and the Lord will save me. Evening and morning and at noon I utter my complaint and moan, and he hears my voice. He redeems my soul in safety from the battle that I wage. For many are arrayed against me. God will give ear and humble them, he who is enthroned from of old. Or is that word Selah? What should we do? Think over verse 19 again. God will give ear and humble them, he who is enthroned from of old, because they do not change and do not fear God. My companion stretched out his hand against his friends. He violated his covenant. His speech was smooth as butter, yet war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. Cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. But you, O God, will cast them down into the pit of destruction. Men of blood and treachery shall not live out half their days. But I will trust in you. So, how do I fight my own attitude? Here's the answer. I tell God about it. It's so simple, and yet it's so obvious. What do I do with my bad attitude? How do I fight my own attitude? I tell God about it. I loved that verses 16 and 17, but I call to God. See, I think in verses 1 through 15, he's sharing with us his bad attitude. Verse 16, but what do I need to do? I need to call to God, and the Lord will save me. Evening and morning and at noon, I utter my complaint and moan, and he hears my voice. I have to tell you that it's so freeing, so liberating. It's so uplifting to think, now I know what to do with my own attitude. I tell God about it. And what's the purpose of hiding anything from him? What's the purpose of hiding my feeling from him? He knows it all already. And so to get to share it with him and tell him, this is exactly how I feel. Here's my bad attitude exposed before you. And he hears my voice. In doing so, like in verse 22, it's just casting my burden upon the Lord, because a bad attitude is a burden. He will sustain me. He'll never permit the righteous to be moved. And of course, it all ends on verse 23. But I will trust in you. So I get to unload my bad attitude, get it off my chest, let him hear it all. And I need to come to this conclusion, this life application. But I will trust in you. Keep fighting this week. And may Psalm 55 be to all of us our fighter chapter for the week.